Welcome to the Learneezee cast. I'm Rico Lazo, joined as always by my co-host, Patrick Bastien, the masterful networker. Today, we're raising a glass to the entrepreneurial spirit with the craft beer enthusiast turned business owner, Jorrell. Welcome to the show, Jorrell.
Thanks for having me.
How are you doing today?
Yeah, so today I'm extremely tired. I have my day job during the week, Monday through Friday, and on the weekend, I was doing my other job, brewing and serving. And so today I'm burning the candle a little bit at both ends.
Well, thank you for making the time for us. I do appreciate that, Jorrell. And Patrick, how are you doing, my brother?
I'm happy that we finally get the chance to talk to Jorrell about his life and his business.
Well, great. Let's get this show on the road, guys. Jorrell, let's just jump right into the questions. Where are you originally from, and what languages do you speak?
So I'm originally from Connecticut, specifically Rocky Hill, Connecticut. And the languages I speak, so there in Rocky Hill, I learned Spanish and Portuguese. And when I came to Germany, those two languages sort of went to the back, and now I'm pretty much fluent in German and pretty much fluent in English also. So those are my four languages.
Wow, impressive.
Did I hear Portuguese?
Yeah, Portuguese.
Because of the school or because of your personal interest in Portuguese? That's interesting for me.
Well, I've compared Portuguese to Spanish. I don't know if any Germans are listening, but it's sort of like Hochdeutsch to Badisch. So it's almost like a dialect. Like in my head, I just had to italicize the Spanish word and I could pick it up. And it's because I did capoeira, which is a Brazilian martial art. And so in capoeira, everything was in Portuguese. My master only spoke Portuguese. And so whenever we would hang out together, I picked up Portuguese. And it's one of my favorite languages. I just love how it sounds, very musical, even when in everyday speech. So I really dedicated myself to learning it.
Awesome. Yeah. And so you're the master of languages, Jorrell. But you also have skills in other areas that I can only say, I'm very impressed with. I'm really interested in how you got into homebrewing. That's something that, not everyone gets into just out of a whim. Can you give us a little bit of a story about, how you started into that world, or what got you into it?
So basically, long story short, I was studying for my medical exams, and I realized I don't want to do this anymore. And I closed the book in the library, and I went online, and I was like, what am I going to do with my life? Because I had dedicated almost a decade of my life to medical studies. And I started seeing that you could study brewing in Germany without any sort of formal background. So I enrolled in the Technical University of Munich for the brewmaster program. And as a part of that program, you had to work for a year in a brewery. By work, I mean sort of an internship. And so I guess that's when I started burning the candle. So I had to work during the day, and then at the brewery, and then I had to come home at night to teach English to basically fund my life. And I did that for about 6 months in the Black Forest. And then the public transportation line between here and the brewery went, there was construction. And so I would have had to take a train and a bus and a taxi. And I said, I really like this brewing thing. I had very little money in my bank account, and I said, I'm just going to order a brewing kit. And so I just ordered a brewing kit, and I just loved it. I don't know. I love the biological nature of it. So I have a background in biology, studying all the pathways of the yeast and how they make sugar and how they make different things that people don't like in terms of flavor profiles. And one thing that I also like about it is that it's scientific and artistic at the same time. So no matter, I could give Rico the same, or you the same lesson, you could have the same knowledge in my head, but we're going to have 3 different beers at the end of the day because it depends on so many things: the humidity, how much you stir. It's just, I love it how it's artistic, how just everything's new. Every time I brew something, it's new. And so that's how I fell in love with brewing. And I don't want to the boat, but sort of everybody liked things I was brewing. And then I noticed that the beers are starting to pile up in my house. And so I said, okay, people like it. I have a lot. So I researched how to turn it into a business. That's when Alahan was born.
Jorrell, I know you're originally from the United States. What is your knowledge of the brewing industry in the United States versus Germany? You mentioned you started brewing in Germany. Do you have background or knowledge of brewing in the U.S.?
In the U.S., so before I left the U.S. and for Germany, I had never had a beer in my life. I had to know really what it tasted like, what it was. But I came to Germany, started getting into the brewing culture here. And then when I went back to the States, I discovered sort of the craft beer revolution. All these IPAs and, just and how much history and how much thought is put into the brewing world in the U.S. And then I came back to Germany and I realized it's sort of lacking here. And so I wanted to sort of recreate that experience here in Germany because they have all the technical expertise, of course. But I really love the whole American craft beer scene. Yeah. So I think that's the combination of my brewing in Germany. Here I know the technical stuff, I know all the engineering. And in the US I learned to get that historical spirit and creative spirit also.
Just want to ask a follow-up. Because you mentioned that this craft brewing in the United States was kind of like this revolution that happened, how does that differ for our audience that's not as obviously as knowledgeable as you are to the brewing scene in Germany? Just to kind of provide some more context about the differences perhaps and why you were encouraged to do what you're doing now.
So I think in terms of the craft beer revolution, one of the biggest detriments in Germany, one of the worst things is that they have such a good beer culture. And so it's hard for them, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, sort of thing. And in the US, if you drink Coors or Bud, it's broke. And so it was easy for somebody to come in and fix it. And so that's how I would sort of compare it. So the US, the beginning, it was really hard to find a good beer, but you had a lot of experimentation and that spirit has stayed. And in Germany, that spirit isn't quite here in the same way, but I found my little niche group of people who appreciate my experiments, and I think that's the big difference is receptiveness to the new, and I think it's based on the fact that here they've had such a long tradition of drinkable beer.
Point. Yeah, I was thinking about that as well. This idea of drinkable beer. This is all done in sterilized, very well organized breweries, but could you go into a little bit about this concept of farmhouse or farmhouse style brewing that you're into? Is it exactly the same as craft beer, or is that a subsection? If you could explain it to our audience, that would help.
Yeah, I think my personal definition of craft beer is sort of like artisanal, though it's made by hand in small amounts. And, a craft beer can be a Pilsner that had very little flavor. And they can also be a double dry hop barrel aged, whatever, and it's pretty much the process of not industrialized product. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think in Germany, the beer scene is very industrialized. It's very clean. You can't make any mistakes. They use minimal ingredients, and it's a very clean and one straightforward flavor. And that doesn't attract me as much as what I would call farmhouse brewing, which is sort of, let's see what we have around and see what we can make out of it. That's where we brew now. The guy makes wheat. He grows his own wheat. He grows his own barley. And when I go to the store for a normal beer, I can buy 35 types of barley. I can make anything you want, Guinness, But there we only have one thing. And so I had to figure out, how can I make something different with this? And so, for example, I read about how historically different farmers around Europe have made different products. And so recently I actually started making a beer, and sort of like in the Lithuanian tradition, in the middle of it, I put it in the oven and baked it for 4 hours. And then I put it back in the brewing. So it was a really long brew day. but it just turned in. I only had a light malt, and I turned it into a dark malt. Had no idea what would come out. I just, I don't know. All my recipes always come out tasting pretty decent. And I'm sorry, I pat myself on the back, but it's sort of like an orchestra. I figure out, okay, I know it's going to be this sweet and this sour, and then I can make it. And I just love that the farmhouse spirit of I don't have everything, but I'm going to make something. And so that's why I really, really, really love farmhouse brewing, as opposed to the traditional industrialized brewing, which is this is how we're going to do it. This is how it's always been done. And if it doesn't taste like this, throw it out.
So does the farmhouse style, does that sort of equate then to sort of that home brewing in a sense, though, of that sort of desire to do it at home versus the industrial space?
Yeah, it's very, very close to home brewing. Like I consider myself a home brewer on steroid, basically. I have a much bigger system now. But in my heart, I'm always going to be a home brewer of just experiments. And
Very interesting. And I wanted to follow up with another question regarding the brewing process. I was reading, I think doing some research in preparation for this interview about this Demeter certification. I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Jorrell, but if you can maybe tell us what it is, how to pronounce it, and what does this mean for your brewery and your beer specifically?
yeah, so I know how to say it in German. I've never seen it in an English-speaking world. They say Demeter here.
Yeah, Demeter. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
No idea. How to say it in any other language. It's really a German thing, so it was started here. Yesterday was actually the 100-year anniversary. That's why I was out. I had to drive 2 hours for beer. We're the first fully Demeter brewery in the world. And so, what does it mean? I'm going to be completely transparent. We had this podcast last year this time. It would have meant nothing to me. It would have meant, the beer that just cost twice as much as the other beer in the store. But slowly, I've come to understand it, although it has some areas in the beer world that I don't like. So the first thing I'll say is that Demeter is sort of like the organic certification, except much stricter. So the organic certification focuses on the ingredients that you use. Yeah, you have to make organic wheat. You have to put in organic this. You go buy those things. Whereas the Demeter focuses on the entire process. So the cleaning has to be, also sustainable. We can't use certain chemicals when we clean. We can't, when we're finished with the grain, we can't just throw it in the garbage. We have to feed it to the chickens. So that's great because we brew on the farm, and so the chickens are literally right outside the brew house, and they love spent grain. So Demeter is a little bit more of a holistic approach to sustainability than the organic, and I really like how it fits in with the farmhouse principle that I sort of also had with brewing. So yeah, Demeter is very holistic. So they not just the ingredients you use, it's also the whole process, the whole facility, so to speak. And so the farm we're on is a Demeter farm. They have chickens, cows, and also apples and cherries and other things. And he has to produce. I think he might call me up after this. Here's this. I think it's about 80%. He has to produce 80% of the food that the cows eat. So he can't buy it. He has to produce it himself. So it's really about the clothes, keeping it as local as possible. That you're really relying on yourself. And again, that's perfect for the farmhouse tradition. Like so for example, he can only use natural fertilizers. And so he put them in the corner, and apparently, or he put them on the field, getting ready for the next year. And apparently there were some pumpkin seeds in there. And so now we have pumpkin. And now I'm going to make a pumpkin beer just because randomly pumpkin showed up on the farm. And so that's really in the Demeter spirit. You can't use any really industrial things. We have to use our living yeast. I don't know if you've baked bread before. You can buy a little packet of yeast, put it in water. You can also do that for beer, and a vast majority of breweries just use packaged yeast, dried yeast. And Demeter said you can't do that. You have to use a living culture. That's where my biological background comes from. I actually have yeast kind of sitting all around the house. Um, and I have to feed it like a sourdough starter. And I love it. Yeah, I love that aspect of it. And no filtering, no pasteurization. It's just beer as nature. But it's a product as nature intended. Yeah.
Is there anything similar in the United States to this Demeter process, or this whole ecosystem and being very green and natural?
So Demeter does exist in the U.S. So it actually exists in every country. There are a lot, actually surprisingly, a lot of places that do it in the U.S. Mostly wineries. If you're looking for drinks, a lot of wineries do the Demeter process, and I know that I saw a few Demeter farms in like Vermont. I know they're all about that. Sustainable living, so to speak. But I don't know if there's any other, U.S. specific organizations that do it. But Demeter does have a footprint in the U.S.
Yeah, but still interesting that you chose to go that path, Jorrell, and you seem to be so excited about it. So it's kind of interesting for me to understand. Was sustainability one of the things that you were looking for when you heard about this farm, and then the opportunity to create this kind of farmhouse beer, or to do this farmhouse style brewing? Was that just something that just organically came from your circle of friends here in Germany to do it this way? That's what I'm trying to understand, how you got into it at all.
So what's the pun intended with organically?
Yeah, exactly. Organically or inorganically?
I mean, definitely living in Freiburg, I'm a lot more green than I used to be, so to speak. But I would say the Demeter was the farm was already Demeter, so we had the brewery. In order to produce anything, it had to be Demeter. And then I opened up the guidelines, said, "Oh, what do I have to do?" And I realized it's pretty much the same thing I've been doing the whole time. So, for example, when you brew beer, there's a little bit about the process. So you put the malt in the water, then you separate, and then you have basically a malt tea, just full of sugar, and then you have to boil that for 60 minutes, generally. And at that time, the hops come in, and then you have to cool it directly after. So they basically, it's called no, I don't know what that is in English. My brewing terminology is all in German. But basically, you have to use a lot of water to cool down the wort, within 10 minutes or so. And as a home brewer, I always found that very wasteful, because you would almost use more water to cool it than you would have at the end for beer. I have always done the no cool method, in which I just let it naturally cool outside. And so I basically adapted my process to do that. And so to me, I've always been and I've always used my own yeast, and I don't really buy the dry yeast. And so it was really simple for me to translate that into the Demeter process. The only thing is now the limited ingredients, because there's only one place that makes Demeter hops in the world, and only one place that makes Demeter malt, and they only make 2 types that I can use.
Wow. So do you plan to keep that certification for the long term, or is it okay? Interesting. Okay.
I do, especially after yesterday's event, so that was the first time, I went into the Demeter, the headquarters, or the hives, and I was expecting, I don't want to say the worst, but I was expecting a bit more like, who is this guy? We don't know him. And they immediately accepted me. They were just like, "You have a Demeter beer, you're one of us." They drank the beer, they loved it. They bought cases. It was a great experience. I can totally see being a part of that for the rest of my brewing career, if they'll have me.
I'm curious, Joel. I mean, obviously, you're originally from the United States, but your brewing experience started in Germany. Have you had any unique challenges, disadvantages, or even advantages, just being an American and brewing in Germany?
I think the biggest disadvantage is my American spirit, kind of, which is like if your rule doesn't have a purpose, I don't care about your rule. Like kind of that feeling I have, like the German Reinheitsgebot, I can't stand it. Because it's just for me, like why can't I use wheat? Why can't I use rye? Why can't I use cherries? It's just like what is this law? But I think my biggest the thing I have to push down, sort of, that makes me frustrated here from my American background is a complete lack of cultural connection to this Einheitsgebot.
To the audience, can you explain what Reinheitsgebot means to the non-German speaking audience?
Yeah. So in English they translate it as like the German purity law. So there's a lot of mystery behind this law, and a lot of just fanatical, almost zealots who stand behind this law. Well, the first thing I'll say, it's not a law. That's what a lot of people forget, but basically it is a guideline that says that beer can only contain barley, malt, water, hops, and yeast, and nothing else.
That's crazy, isn't it? When you think about the beers I enjoy from Belgium, they have a lot more, flavor, and they mix and match all types of different ingredients. And it's kind of sad that the German style is so, I hate to say, clean or sanitized.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it kind of had its benefits for a little bit. But I think the quality of German beer comes more from the engineering than this law. Basically the refrigerator was invented because they needed to know how to cool the wort so they could brew in the warm weather. That's why we have a fridge now. At least that's what they told us in brewing school. I don't know. It could have been
Of course, the
some
brewers would
propaganda.
take credit for the
but yeah, so it's also interesting with the Reinheitsgebot, and actually a little bit of a struggle we're having now with the German purity law is they say barley malt. I don't know if do you guys know the difference between barley and barley malt?
No. Educate us, please.
So barley is just like any other grain. It grows, like wheat and whatever. But as itself, you can't grow barley with it in that form. So what you do is you soak it in water, and that activates the enzymes, and then it can grow just like any other seed. Actually, you have to activate all the enzymes and things in there. And so basically, you take the barley, you put it in water, you activate the enzymes, and then you use heat to stop it. And now it has enough enzymes in it to convert all of that starch that's built in there into sugar. Okay, so you need malt in order to brew beer. Like you need those enzymes to turn the starch in the grain into sugar for the yeast to eat. When you activate the enzymes, there's enough enzymes in one little thing, for 3 other ones. So you know what I mean? So it's not just enough enzymes for one. So that's why, for example, Coors Light, you can brew that with corn because there's enough enzyme in the barley to convert the sugar and the starch in the corn to sugar. You give it 20, 30%, just throw in corn, right? So we at our farm, we grow our own barley, but we don't grow enough for a company to turn it into barley malt. So our beer is 70% barley malt that we have to buy, and then 30% of our barley. But because it's 30% of our barley, not barley malt, we can't call it beer in Germany. So if you look at our bottle, the translation, it says alcohol-containing malt grain. So alkoholhaltiges Malzgetränk. And for me, that's such a ridiculous law that people who grow their own barley can't call it beer, but I have to pay beer tax. I can't get around that.
German tax authority, of course, they have to get their cut.
But yeah, so that's another thing. Like the Reinheitsgebot is just really, really weird. Might be too nerdy, but it's like I can't call my beer because I use my own barley. Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing. You using your own barley makes it into something that isn't industry standard. That's basically it. That's it. There's no real difference. But yeah, I'm thinking that could make a good course for some of our students to learn how the chemistry of beer works, you know?
Oh, I love teaching. We definitely want to offer courses at our brewery one day. I don't know. There's an old German called a Teufel, like an old German type of brewery, which was one brewery in a town, and it wasn't Patrick's brewery, it wasn't my brewery, it was the town's brewery. And maybe if Patrick was the best brewer, he'd be the one that's there every Friday or so. But they would all come together, and it was a community thing. Patrick would teach this guy how to brew and this girl how to brew, and then they would brew the things for each other. And that's sort of what I have envisioned for my place, is that people have questions about the beer, they can come. When we brew, we open the brewery, so anybody can come and watch me. Anybody can come and just hang out, and I really like that sort of community spirit.
That's something we need to incorporate into our culture here. In general, I'm not speaking about here in Germany, I mean in the US, that the craft beer culture has to come with this community aspect to it. I feel like the last time I was in the US, when you talk about craft beer, it's very competitive, right? It's not as, you have the community, but it's like a competitive community. Is that anything like, is that a little bit what you experienced when you went to the US a couple of times, Jorrell? Or am I just getting it from the outside looking in? That there's so many craft beers, you know, that there's a competitive market out there. Like everybody's trying to get ahead in the US, and it's not really about sharing your knowledge.
Well, I would disagree a little bit there. I think the US is extremely competitive. Just, I think, generally, both from the brewer side, but particularly from the consumer side. So I find, like, if I get an American customer, he drinks the beer, he's like, okay, what else can you brew? Whereas the German guy's looking for something he can drink every day. I find that the American consumer is always looking for something new. It's like, okay, you put in 3 hops, I'm going to put in 4 next week, or I'm going to go to that guy. And there's also a lot of competitive spirit between the brewers. However, there's a lot more of a collaborative spirit also. You get a lot more collaboration between breweries. And I guarantee I can call an American brewery today and say, how do you make that beer? They would just tell me and basically dare me to make it. Whereas you can't really do that in Germany. Like if you ask anything about the little process, then it's, they don't want to tell you anything. It's like, oh, what hops are in this? What malt do you use?
This is fascinating stuff. I'm just thinking for the beer connoisseur, the consumer, both stateside as well as beyond, Germany, would be very fascinated to learn this. I mean, I think your background in biology, your interest in brewing, doing it with this farmhouse style, with the Demeter certification, very, very fascinating stuff. We would love to really know, how does your commitment to biodynamic farming translate to your overall business practices?
It really made me aware of everything, really, with biodynamics. So, for example, my labels, all recycling paper, like even, everything down to the labels. Even the caps we have on top of the beer, I make sure that they're made of a plastic that can be recycled. I'd say, so Germany has a bottle deposit system, the Pfandsystem, for those who speak German, where you get like 8 cents back if you take back a beer bottle. We do use champagne bottles, which don't have a deposit system, so that maybe is an area of improvement we could do, is to switch to the German style brewing. However, when people bring back the bottles to me, I take them and I wash them and I use them again. So I make sure that, we're not just one-use bottles and people throw them in the trash. I'm collecting bottles all the time. So I think that's how it really translates into it, as I started to think about every step of the brewing process. Do I need to boil for 60 minutes? So, for example, my latest beer, I only boil for 30 minutes. It's still good, and I'm trying to do. I have also several beers I don't boil at all. You just heat them up to 80 degrees and then call it a night, which is another old farmhouse tradition. And so, yeah, I think that's the best way. These biodynamic principles have made me really think about the entire brewing process.
What's next for you, Jorrell, in this brewing journey, with Brouwerhan? and you're and with the Farmhouse Brewing from Brighton, Vega, Hofbrauerei. What's next for you guys? Like what's coming up? You know.
So this Saturday is our official opening. We've been kind of having the soft opening for the local community. Now this Saturday we have the official opening where everybody can come, and then afterwards we'll also be open every Tuesday. So the farmer lives on the farm, of course, and so he'll open up the doors and people can come take some beers home with them. And I think our biggest project right now is we're trying to grow as many things as we can and fight the bureaucratic fight so that maybe simultaneously we'll be able to use those ingredients in our beer, So, yeah, I mean,
Very American, very American.
so we'll see. The Demeter people they really support the fact that we're growing everything together, and they don't see why they can't make a new category for us, so we don't have to call ourselves alcohol-containing malt product. But I think that's the direction we want to go in. I think like Brauerhaken for me is almost like a therapeutic endeavor. Sometimes I just need to express myself creatively. I need to just do something weird. And that's really hard with the Demeter. And I'm hoping that as we expand our, what we're growing, when we're growing it, that I'll be able to merge Brauerhaken completely into the Biodynamic experience. But for now, I'll still brew the occasional Brauerhaken beer that's just weird. And that's what I like. Yeah. So like, I love exploring. I have books. I love exploring historical beer styles. I really like smoked beers too. So we got to figure out how to start smoking our own thing on the brewery. And I guess my ultimate vision is just, I don't want people to have my beer in London, sitting talking about, Brauerhaken. I don't want people in Denver to know my beer. I want people. I just want everybody here. When you Wikipedia Freiburg, I want a little thing that says, this is a place you can get some amazing locally produced beers, and you can only get them here. And so that's my vision for Brauerhaken. We will do, for Biodynamic Brauerhaken,
As we're coming sort of to an end of our show today, Jorrell, are there any insights that you can provide for those who maybe would want to follow in your footsteps and what you've learned, and maybe some things to look out for? You talked about the German purity law, etc. But are there other insights or just lessons that you'd like to share?
I think the first insight I would share is keep the authorities on your good side and don't be afraid of them. I was always afraid of the customs agents because in Germany, for some reason, customs is in charge of domestic beer production. I was always afraid, they're going to, but they were just totally really nice guys who at the end of the day just want to do their job and go home to their families. But if you do stuff if you try to hide stuff from them, you're going to have a huge problem. Just talk openly with the authorities. Don't be afraid of them, and don't try to pull one over on them. It would be my biggest tip for any homebrewers. And I guess the second tip would be just do it. Go to the town hall, register your company. In Germany, luckily, you don't need any certificates to brew. You just need a place that has been, hygienically certified. And so, for example, for me, I just called a local brewery and asked, and he let me brew there. He was just a really nice guy. Just get started. Yeah. Don't brew normal stuff. Be crazy.
So now, how can people learn more or find your brewery, Jorrell?
I think Instagram is the best place to find us. We also have a website, but it will be expanded soon to Breitenweger Hofbrauerei.de. And those are the two, I think, best ways you can contact us or so basically follow our journey. It's Instagram and on the site.
Thank you, Jorrell. It's been a very, very, very fascinating conversation. I think to learn about your background, how you got into it, the fact that this is something you would not necessarily been thinking about until you decided to not pursue a career in medicine, and to see what you're doing now is fascinating, and to learn about these different processes, very, very interesting to say the least, very educational as well. So thank you for coming on to the show.
Thank you again for having me.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to maybe discussing some courses around this topic with you, Jorrell, for the future that we could maybe collaborate on for our Learneezee audience. It sounds like you're actually the perfect candidate to be a brewing coach.
Definitely. That's it's awesome there. I would love to teach or help people. I don't know, maybe they can make the beer better than me and I can just stop and drink theirs.
Exactly. That's the best compliments for a coach, right? But yeah, it's been a pleasure, and yeah, we'll keep in touch, and then we'll let the audience know the next events that are coming up for you.
And you guys take care.
Wow, what a fascinating and insightful interview with Jorrell, learning about his journey. You know, I'm not even drinking at all right now, so I didn't want to mention anything during the interview, but I'm actually very curious to learn more about the Demeter certification. I think it's a really interesting approach that is novel only because it's the way things should be versus the way things have always been done or have been, you know, maybe not always been done, but, you know, with big business coming in, it's always doing things in a very different way. And it was also interesting to hear the differences between the German brewing space versus the American space, but a lot to learn. And if he does do a course, I'd be very interested to learn more about what goes into brewing and the farmhouse style and everything he's doing. And really just a fascinating interview.
Yeah, I was just happy to get a chance to talk to Jorrell, a person that I consider to be one of these brilliant, you know, people here who have, you know, chosen to make their life in a new country and have found a way to adjust to, you know, the culture, but still challenge it a little bit, you know. And so it's a perfect expat to continue, you know, interviewing in the sense. We need to talk to more people like Jorrell, and yeah, we will try to get a course going with Jorrell in the near future. And talking about courses, Learneezee has a self-study course that is coming up around this topic of sustainability, but more on the corporate side. And I think folks will get to hear about it more in the near future. I just wanted to just, you know, tell everyone to, you know, stay tuned, but because we'll have a course coming up, one of our first self-study courses from Learneezee.com. Yeah.
Very exciting stuff for Learneezee on that front. Pat, we've been doing this podcast for 4 years now. This is episode 26.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just wanted to let the audience know that I am going to be stepping down as co-host from Learneezee as a co-host, as I've really been going full force on my coaching front. I just wanted to sort of let everyone know what is Rico going to be doing. I'm going full force with my coaching. Communication and pronunciation coaching is really what I've been doing full time now, and just want to continue growing in that practice. But Pat, it's been a real pleasure working with you on this podcast, watching it grow, being able to interview so many different guests across different industries. It's been a very, very fascinating experience with you, man.
Yeah, too bad. It's really not my wish that you have to, you know, give up the podcasting with us, but, you know, I'm wishing you all the best, and yeah, we'll miss you. And of course, if you ever want to come back around and, you know, just spot guest co-host once here and there, you're welcome to come back. And yeah, to the audience, yeah, I am looking forward, you know, to continuing the podcast. And yeah, Rico will still, you know, be a supporter in all the ways that you can support a podcast.
Thank you, Pat. And to all of our listeners, thank you for being a part of this journey. If you've been tuning in since episode 1, dating back to May of 2020, I want to wish you all the future success, Pat, with both the Learneezee cast and the new courses. And I'm looking very much forward to seeing the sustainability course. And hopefully Jorrell will be on board to do a course on the farmhouse style brewing. I think it's a very fascinating topic. Really, really interesting. But thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. Until next time.